The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with wonders and terrors beyond imagination. For centuries it had been ruled by the Krylos, an alien empire known for its cruelty and greed. Their ships, sleek and menacing, patrolled star systems like predators hunting prey. They took what they wanted, resources, technology, lives, and left nothing but despair in their wake. Humanity, still new to the stars, had quickly learned that resistance was futile. Earth's colonies were stripped bare, its people forced into labor or treated as little more than slaves. Daniel Carter sat hunched over a makeshift workbench inside a cramped salvage station orbiting a desolate moon. His hands moved deftly over a piece of broken machinery, tightening screws and welding wires together. The air around him smelled faintly of oil and burnt metal. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid enough to keep him alive. Daniel had spent most of his life fixing things: broken engines, damaged communication arrays, anything people were willing to trade food or credits for. He wasn't a fighter or a leader. He was just a man trying to survive in a universe that seemed determined to crush him. But survival wasn't easy when you lived under the thumb of the Krylos. Every day brought reminders of their dominance, their warships looming overhead, their patrols sweeping through human settlements, their enforcers meting out punishment without mercy. Daniel hated them, though he rarely showed it. Anger wouldn't do him any good here. Survival required caution, not rebellion. Still, there were moments when he dreamed of something better, a world where humanity could stand tall, free from fear and oppression. Rachel Monroe was different. She didn't dream about freedom. She fought for it. Once a skilled pilot in Earth's fledgling Space Force, she had joined the resistance after witnessing the Krylos destroy an entire colony, simply because its inhabitants refused to hand over their meager resources. That massacre had changed her forever, hardening her resolve and teaching her that hope alone wasn't enough. If humanity wanted to reclaim its dignity, it needed strength. And strength meant taking risks. Rachel led a small group of rebels operating out of hidden bases scattered across the galaxy. They sabotaged Krylos supply lines, disrupted communications, and rescued prisoners whenever possible. Their efforts were modest compared to the scale of the Empire's tyranny, but every victory mattered. Even so, Rachel knew they couldn't win this fight on their own. The Krylos had numbers, firepower, and centuries of experience conquering other species. Without a decisive advantage, humanity's struggle would end in failure. It was fate, or maybe sheer luck, that brought Daniel and Rachel together. One evening, while scavenging through a dense asteroid field near the edge of Krylos-controlled space, Daniel stumbled upon something extraordinary. Nestled between jagged rocks and swirling debris was a massive object partially buried beneath layers of cosmic dust. At first glance, it looked like another wrecked ship, but as Daniel approached, he realized it was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its surface gleamed faintly despite being covered in grime, and its design bore no resemblance to Krylos vessels or even human spacecraft. Curiosity got the better of him. Using a handheld scanner, Daniel examined the structure. The readings were baffling. Advanced alloys, energy signatures unlike anything recorded, and traces of ancient technology. Whatever this thing was, it predated the Krylos by millennia. Daniel's heart raced as he imagined the possibilities. Could this be the key to tipping the scales against the Empire? Or was it just another relic of a dead civilization? Before he could investigate further, his comm device crackled to life. "Daniel, you there?" The voice belonged to Rachel, who had heard rumors of his discovery through her network of informants. She sounded cautious but intrigued. "We need to talk." Daniel hesitated. Trust didn't come easily in these parts, especially when dealing with rebels, but something told him Rachel might understand what he was looking at. Reluctantly, he agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a derelict fueling station drifting silently in the void. When Rachel arrived, she wasted no time getting to the point. "What did you find?" she asked, her sharp eyes studying him intently. Daniel explained everything. The strange ship, the unusual readings, the potential implications. As he spoke, Rachel's expression shifted from skepticism to excitement. This wasn't just another artifact, it could be the weapon humanity desperately needed. "Take me to it," she said firmly. Daniel nodded, sensing that refusing wasn't an option. Together they piloted a battered shuttle back to the asteroid field, navigating carefully to avoid detection by Krylos patrols. When they reached the site, Rachel stared at the ancient vessel in awe. Up close, it was even more impressive than Daniel had described. Towering spires jutted from its hull, and intricate patterns etched into its surface glowed faintly in the dim light. "This changes everything," Rachel murmured, running her fingers along the smooth metal. "If we can figure out how to use it." Her words trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. If they could unlock the secrets of this ship, humanity might finally have a chance against the Krylos. But unlocking those secrets wouldn't be easy. The controls were unfamiliar, the language indecipherable, and then there was the matter of time. News of their discovery wouldn't stay hidden for long, not in a galaxy crawling with spies and opportunists. As if on cue, alarms blared suddenly, startling both of them. A squadron of Krylos fighters appeared on the horizon, moving fast. Commander Vrax, one of the Empire's most feared enforcers, had caught wind of their activities and wasn't about to let such a valuable prize slip away. "We need to move," Rachel shouted, already sprinting toward their shuttle. Daniel hesitated, torn between fleeing and trying to retrieve more data. In the end, survival won out. He scrambled aboard the shuttle just as the first shots rang out, narrowly avoiding a blast that sent shards of rock flying in all directions. As they rocketed away from the scene, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving behind something far greater than either of them understood. Back at their temporary base, Rachel paced anxiously while Daniel reviewed the limited information they had managed to gather. The scans confirmed what they suspected. This ship was part of a larger fleet scattered across the galaxy. Each vessel contained untold power, waiting to be claimed by whoever dared to awaken it. But claiming that power came with risks. Activating the ship might attract not only the Krylos but also other factions eager to exploit its capabilities. Despite the danger, Rachel saw only opportunity. "This is our chance," she insisted, turning to face Daniel. "We can't sit back and wait for someone else to do something. If we don't act now, humanity will never break free." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. He wasn't a hero, just a mechanic trying to get by. Yet deep down, he knew Rachel was right. The galaxy wouldn't save itself. Someone had to take the first step, no matter how daunting the task. And so, with grim determination, they began planning their next move. Little did they know, their actions would set off a chain reaction that would alter the course of history and awaken forces long thought lost to time. Daniel and Rachel didn't waste any time. The moment they returned to their hidden base, they began poring over the data they had collected from the ancient ship. It wasn't much, just a few scans and fragments of information. But it was enough to confirm their suspicions. This vessel was part of something far greater, a fleet of ships scattered across the galaxy. Each one seemed to hold incredible power, but unlocking it required solving puzzles that were thousands, maybe millions, of years old. The first challenge was deciphering the language etched into the ship's walls. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, forming patterns that looked almost like writing. Daniel spent hours poring over the scans, trying to find some kind of logic or structure in the markings. Rachel, meanwhile, reached out to her network of rebels, hoping someone might have encountered similar artifacts in the past. Most dismissed her inquiries as wild speculation, but one contact, an exiled scientist named Ethan, offered a lead. He claimed to have studied precursor ruins during his time at a Krylos research facility. Ethan agreed to meet them secretly on a remote asteroid. When they arrived, he greeted them with a mix of curiosity and caution. A wiry man with tired eyes, Ethan carried a small device filled with notes and recordings. "I don't know how much help this will be," he admitted, handing the device to Rachel. "But it's everything I managed to save before the Krylos threw me out." As Daniel reviewed the files, he found references to a precursor race known as the Arendor. They were said to have ruled the galaxy eons ago, building wonders beyond comprehension before vanishing without explanation. Some believed they ascended to another plane of existence. Others thought they destroyed themselves in a catastrophic war. Whatever the truth, their legacy endured in the form of relics like the ship Daniel had discovered. Using Ethan's data, Daniel made slow progress, decoding the symbols. Each breakthrough brought new questions. The text spoke of guardians, protectors of balance, and warnings about those who sought power for selfish reasons. There were also instructions, cryptic steps for activating the ship's systems. But, even as they pieced together the puzzle, tension grew between Daniel and Rachel. She wanted to rush forward, to test their theories and unleash the ship's potential immediately. Daniel, however, urged caution. "We're dealing with technology we barely understand," he argued. "One wrong move, and we could blow ourselves up or worse." Their disagreement came to a head when Rachel insisted on attempting activation. "We don't have time to second-guess every step," she snapped. "The Krylos are already hunting us. If we wait too long, they'll take this ship and use it against us." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed to proceed, though his stomach churned with unease. The activation process was unlike anything they had anticipated. Instead of pressing buttons or flipping switches, the ship responded to biometric inputs, specifically human touch. When Rachel placed her hand on a glowing panel, the entire vessel hummed to life. Lights flickered on, illuminating corridors and chambers that had been dark for millennia. Holographic displays sprang up, showing star maps and schematics of other ships. It was clear now, the fleet was real, and humanity had somehow earned its trust. But the ship wasn't fully operational yet. Many systems remained offline, requiring further calibration. As they worked, Daniel noticed something odd. The ship seemed to adapt to their presence, adjusting controls and interfaces to match their understanding. It was as if it recognized them, not just as intelligent beings, but as heirs to its creators. This realization sent chills down his spine. What did it mean? Were humans truly connected to the Arendor? Before they could explore the implications, disaster struck. "Commander." Vrax, the Krylos enforcer tasked with retrieving the artifact, tracked them to their base. His squadron descended like a swarm of locusts, firing indiscriminately and forcing Daniel and Rachel to flee aboard the partially awakened ship. With no time to prepare, Daniel activated the hyperdrive, plunging them into uncharted space. The journey was disorienting. Streams of light streaked past the windows as the ship hurtled through hyperspace, leaving the Krylos behind. When they finally emerged, they found themselves near a hidden star system, teeming with dormant vessels. Hundreds of ships floated silently, in the void, each identical to the one they now commanded. It was breathtaking and terrifying. Rachel stared out at the fleet, her mind racing. "This is it," she whispered. "This is how we win." Daniel, however, felt a pang of dread. Activating one ship had been risky enough. Waking an entire fleet could destabilize regions of space, or attract enemies even more dangerous than the Krylos. Despite his reservations, there was no turning back. Word of their discovery spread quickly among the oppressed populations of the galaxy. Tales of the ancient fleet inspired hope and defiance, sparking rebellions across Krylos-controlled territories. Humans, once seen as weak and insignificant, became symbols of resistance. Meanwhile, Commander Vrax grew increasingly desperate. Fearing the loss of control, he ordered brutal crackdowns, punishing dissent with merciless efficiency. Back in the hidden star system, Daniel and Rachel faced a dilemma. Should they risk awakening all the ships simultaneously, potentially unleashing chaos? Or should they focus on securing alliances with neighboring species, building a coalition strong enough to challenge the Krylos? After much debate, they decided to do both. Rachel coordinated emissaries to rally support, while Daniel worked tirelessly to bring the fleet online. Progress was slow and fraught with challenges. Each ship required careful calibration, and the sheer scale of the operation tested their limits. Supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and exhaustion took its toll. Yet despite the hardships, they pressed on, driven by the belief that humanity deserved a future free from oppression. As the days turned into weeks, the fleet began to awaken. Ships lit up one by one, their engines roaring to life after centuries of dormancy. The sight was awe-inspiring, a testament to the ingenuity of a lost civilization and the resilience of those who dared to dream. For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to feel a glimmer of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. Commander Vrax, however, wasn't about to let them succeed. His forces closed in, determined to reclaim the fleet and crush the rebellion once and for all. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Humanity's newfound strength would soon be put to the ultimate test. The hidden star system was alive with activity. Ships that had lain dormant for millennia now hummed with energy, their ancient systems slowly coming back to life. Daniel and Rachel worked tirelessly alongside a small team of rebels and scientists, piecing together the secrets of the fleet. Each day brought new discoveries. Weapons capable of vaporizing entire armies, shields strong enough to repel asteroid impacts, engines that could traverse light years in seconds. The technology was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. But with every breakthrough came reminders of the stakes. The Krylos weren't far behind. Commander Vrax's forces were closing in, their sensors picking up faint traces of the fleet's activation. Messages intercepted by Rachel's network painted a grim picture. Vrax had assembled a massive armada, intent on crushing the rebellion before it gained momentum. Time was running out. Daniel spent most of his time aboard the flagship, the first ship they had awakened. Its vast interior was a labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and control rooms, each filled with alien machinery. He moved through the ship like a ghost, deciphering codes, rerouting power, and troubleshooting glitches. Despite the pressure, he couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship. The Arendor had built these vessels not just as tools of war, but as works of art. Every detail served a purpose, every design element told a story. Rachel, meanwhile, focused on rallying support. She sent emissaries to neighboring species who had suffered under Krylos rule, humans, Zarnathi traders, even a group of insectoid Vrelic refugees. At first, many were skeptical. Why should they trust two humans with a fleet they barely understood? But Rachel's passion and conviction won them over. She spoke of unity, of breaking free from fear and building a galaxy where no one species ruled over another. Slowly, alliances formed, and ships from other races joined the growing coalition. As the fleet expanded, so did its capabilities. With each new ally came fresh ideas and expertise. A Zarnathi engineer helped refine the fleet's targeting systems, while a Vrelic mechanic devised ways to repair damaged hulls faster. Even among humans, ingenuity flourished. Some suggested using decoy signals to confuse Krylos patrols. Others proposed creating supply lines to keep the fleet operational during prolonged battles. It was a chaotic but inspiring effort, proof that cooperation could achieve what brute force alone could not. Yet despite their progress, doubts lingered. Daniel often found himself staring at the holographic displays showing the locations of other ships in the fleet. How reliable were they? Could the ancient technology withstand the strain of combat? And what about the warnings embedded in the Arendor texts? The more he read, the more he sensed unease. These ships weren't meant to dominate. They were designed to protect, to maintain balance. What would happen if humanity misused them? His fears came to a head during a meeting with Rachel and their advisors. "We're rushing into this," Daniel said, his voice tight with frustration. "We don't fully understand how these ships work. If we push too hard, we might lose control, or worse." Rachel shook her head. "We don't have a choice," she replied. "Vrax is coming, and when he gets here, we'll need everything we've got. We can't afford to hold back." Her words struck a chord, but they didn't ease Daniel's concerns. Still, he knew she was right. The Krylos wouldn't hesitate to destroy them if given the chance. Preparation was essential, but hesitation could be fatal. Days turned into weeks and the tension mounted. Scouts reported that Vrax's armada was nearing the edge of the star system. Escape wasn't an option, not with so many ships still offline. Their only hope was to stand and fight. When the battle finally began, it was chaos. The Krylos fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm cloud, hundreds of ships blotting out the stars. Their weapons fired indiscriminately, tearing through asteroids and smaller vessels alike. For a moment, it seemed impossible to resist. But then the ancient fleet responded. Daniel stood on the bridge of the flagship, gripping the railing as orders flew across the comm channels. The Arendor ships moved with precision, forming defensive formations that shielded the weaker allied vessels. Energy shields flared to life, absorbing barrages of plasma fire. When the fleet counterattacked, the results were devastating. Beams of light cut through Krylos cruisers like knives through paper, reducing them to drifting wreckage. Missiles launched from the ancient ships homed in on their targets with unerring accuracy, obliterating entire squadrons in seconds. Rachel led strike teams aboard enemy vessels, coordinating sabotage missions to cripple key systems. Her bravery inspired others to follow suit. Together they planted explosives, disabled weapons arrays, and captured command centers. The Krylos fought back fiercely, but their numerical advantage was no match for the superior technology of the Arendor fleet. Even so, victory came at a cost. Dozens of ships from the ancient fleet were destroyed, their crews lost in the void. Casualties mounted on both sides, and the battlefield became a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Daniel watched it all unfold from the flagship's viewport, his heart heavy with grief. This was war. Not the heroic struggle he'd imagined, but a brutal, ugly reality. Amid the carnage, Commander Vrax made one last desperate attempt to turn the tide. He ordered his flagship to ram the ancient vessel Daniel commanded, hoping to take out its leader in a final act of defiance. But Rachel anticipated the move. Using stolen codes, she hacked into the Krylos ship's navigation system, diverting it into the path of an asteroid. The collision was catastrophic, obliterating both vessels in a blinding explosion. With Vrax gone, the remaining Krylos forces faltered. Their retreat was swift and disorganized, leaving behind a trail of debris and unanswered questions. Humanity and its allies had won, but at what price? As the dust settled, Daniel and Rachel surveyed the aftermath. The once pristine star system was scarred by battle, its silence replaced by the groan of dying ships and the cries of wounded survivors. Yet amidst the destruction, there was hope. The Krylos Empire had been dealt a crippling blow, and the galaxy now knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Rachel approached Daniel, her face smudged with soot but her eyes shining with determination. "It's not over," she said softly. "But we've taken the first step." Daniel nodded, though his thoughts remained troubled. They had awakened a power greater than anyone could have imagined, but wielding it responsibly would be their greatest challenge yet. The battle was over, but the galaxy wasn't at peace. The Krylos Armada had been defeated, its commander dead, and its forces in retreat. Yet the victory felt hollow. The star system where humanity had made its stand was littered with wreckage, burning, hulls of ships, floating debris, and the silent remains of those who hadn't survived. For every cheer of triumph, there was a moment of quiet mourning. Daniel and Rachel stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the devastation. It was a reminder that even the most powerful weapons couldn't erase the cost of war. Rachel broke the silence first. "We need to act fast," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "The Krylos won't stay gone for long. They'll regroup, rebuild, and come back stronger if we let them." Daniel nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He had spent hours poring over logs from the battle, analyzing what worked and what didn't. The ancient fleet's technology was unmatched, but it wasn't invincible. Dozens of ships had been lost, their crews sacrificed in the fight. If they wanted to end the Krylos threat once and for all, they needed more than brute force. They needed strategy. Together, they called a meeting with their allies. Representatives from human colonies, Sarnathi traders and Vrelic refugees gathered aboard the flagship. The mood was tense but hopeful. These species had suffered under Krylos rule for centuries, and now they saw a chance to break free. Rachel addressed them directly, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. "We've shown the Krylos that we can fight back," she began. "But defeating their fleet isn't enough. We have to dismantle their empire. That means taking the fight to their homeworlds, freeing their slaves and showing every oppressed species in the galaxy that they don't have to live in fear anymore." Her speech was met with murmurs of agreement, but not everyone was convinced. A Zarnathi elder raised a hand, his scarred face lined with worry. "What you're proposing is dangerous," he said. "Attacking the Krylos heartland will provoke a response unlike anything we've seen. Are we ready for that?" Rachel hesitated, glancing at Daniel. He stepped forward, speaking for the first time. "It's true that we're risking everything," he admitted, "but staying on the defensive won't work either. The Krylos will keep coming until they destroy us, or until we destroy them. We have the power to change the balance. The question is, do we have the courage to use it?" The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Slowly, one by one, the representatives nodded. Humanity and its allies had faced impossible odds before, and they had won. Now they would take the fight to the enemy. Preparations for the assault began immediately. The ancient fleet was repaired and refitted, its systems optimized for maximum efficiency. Engineers worked around the clock, patching hull breaches, replacing damaged components, and upgrading weapons. Supplies were stockpiled, and new recruits joined the ranks of the Allied forces. Messages of support poured in from across the galaxy, fueling morale and strengthening resolve. Daniel focused on studying the Arendor texts, searching for insights into the Krylos homeworlds. The precursor race had left behind detailed star maps, marking key locations across the galaxy. Some areas were labeled as forbidden, suggesting they held dangers even the Arendor had avoided. Others were marked with symbols of power, likely, indicating strategic targets. Among these was the Krylos capital, a heavily fortified planet surrounded by layers of defense grids and orbital stations. "It's going to be a bloodbath," Daniel muttered as he reviewed the data. "They'll throw everything they've got at us." Rachel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," she said. "But we've got something they don't, an army willing to fight for freedom instead of conquest." The plan was simple yet bold. The fleet would split into two groups. One would launch a diversionary attack on the outer edges of the Krylos Empire, drawing their forces away from the capital. The second group, led by Rachel and Daniel, would strike at the heart of the empire, targeting key installations and crippling their ability to wage war. Success depended on speed, precision, and coordination. As the fleet prepared to jump into hyperspace, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The Krylos weren't stupid. They would expect retaliation. But Rachel's confidence was infectious, and he reminded himself why they were doing this. Not just for revenge, but for a future where no one had to live under tyranny. The assault began with a deafening roar. The diversionary fleet struck first, hitting supply depots, shipyards, and communication hubs along the Empire's borders. The attacks were swift and brutal, leaving the Krylos scrambling to respond. Meanwhile, Rachel and Daniel's group slipped, past the chaos, heading straight for the capital. When they arrived, the sight was overwhelming. The Krylos homeworld was a fortress in space, encircled by massive orbital platforms bristling with weapons. Swarms of fighters patrolled the skies, and ground-based defenses lit up the horizon with streaks of plasma fire. It was clear that the Krylos had anticipated an attack, but they hadn't expected the sheer scale of the force arrayed against them. The battle erupted with ferocity. Ancient ships clashed with Krylos cruisers, their shields glowing brightly as they absorbed wave after wave of fire. Missiles streaked across the void, exploding in bursts of light. Rachel coordinated the assault from the flagship, her voice calm but commanding as she directed squadrons and adjusted tactics on the fly. Daniel monitored the ship's systems, ensuring that every weapon, shield, and engine functioned perfectly. Despite the intensity of the fighting, the Allied forces gained the upper hand. The Arendor technology proved too advanced for the Krylos to counter effectively. One by one, The orbital platforms fell, their defenses overwhelmed by concentrated barrages. With the skies cleared, the fleet turned its attention to the planet. Below, ground forces landed in key locations, securing vital facilities and freeing enslaved populations. The Krylos fought back fiercely, but their morale was crumbling. Seeing their once invincible empire falter inspired resistance among their own subjects. Revolts broke out across the planet, further destabilizing the regime. In the final hours of the battle, Rachel led a daring raid on the Krylos command center. Accompanied by a small team, she infiltrated the heavily guarded compound and confronted the surviving leaders of the empire. What followed was less a negotiation and more a demand for surrender. The Krylos, realizing they had no choice, agreed to withdraw from occupied territories and dismantle their military infrastructure. As news of the victory spread, celebrations erupted across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, hope replaced fear. Humanity and its allies had toppled a tyrant, proving that unity and determination could overcome even the strongest oppressor. But for Daniel and Rachel, the work wasn't done. They stood, together on the bridge of the flagship, watching as the Krylos homeworld faded into the distance. The galaxy was free, for now, but rebuilding would take time. And the ancient fleet, though victorious, remained a mystery. Its true purpose, its creator's intentions, and its connection to humanity were questions still waiting to be answered. "We've won the war," Rachel said softly. "But the real challenge starts now." Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "Let's get to work." The galaxy was changing. The fall of the Krylos Empire marked the beginning of a new era, one defined not by fear and oppression, but by hope and cooperation. Humanity, once seen as weak and insignificant, had risen to become a symbol of resilience and unity. The ancient fleet, with its unparalleled power, stood as a testament to what could be achieved when strength was wielded for the greater good. Daniel and Rachel found themselves at the center of this transformation. They were no longer just survivors, or rebels. They were leaders tasked with guiding a fractured galaxy toward peace. But leadership came with challenges far greater than any battle they had fought. Rebuilding required more than weapons and ships. It demanded patience, understanding, and trust. Their first priority was stabilizing the regions once controlled by the Krylos. Entire star systems had been devastated by centuries of exploitation, their resources drained, and populations left, impoverished. Rachel organized relief missions, sending supplies and medical aid to struggling colonies. Engineers from the allied species worked together to repair infrastructure, restoring power grids, purifying water supplies, and rebuilding homes. It was slow, painstaking work, but every small victory brought the galaxy closer to recovery. Daniel focused on the ancient fleet, ensuring that its technology was used responsibly. He established a council of scientists, engineers, and ethicists to study the Arendor artifacts and determine how best to integrate them into society. The fleet's ships became guardians of peace, patrolling the galaxy to prevent conflicts and protect vulnerable populations. Their presence served as both a deterrent to aggression and a reminder of the cost of war. But not everyone welcomed the changes. Some factions, embittered by years of suffering under the Krylos, sought revenge rather than reconciliation. Pirates and mercenaries roamed the stars, preying on unprotected settlements. Others, driven by greed, tried to claim pieces of the fallen empire for themselves. Daniel and Rachel knew that maintaining order would require constant vigilance. Address these threats, they proposed forming a coalition, a united front of species working together to ensure lasting peace. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on a neutral planet to discuss the idea. For weeks, debates raged over issues like governance, resource distribution, and defense. Tensions ran high, especially between species who had once been enemies. But Rachel refused to let disagreements derail progress. She reminded them of the sacrifices made during the war and urged them to focus on the future rather than the past. "We've all suffered under the Krylos," she said during one heated session. "But we can't let that pain divide us. If We want a better galaxy. We have to build it together. Her words struck a chord. Slowly, agreements were reached. The coalition was officially formed, with each member species contributing resources, knowledge, and personnel to its success. Humanity played a central role, not as rulers but as equals. Daniel and Rachel were elected as co-leaders, tasked with overseeing the coalition's efforts. As the coalition grew stronger, so did its impact. Trade routes reopened, allowing goods and ideas to flow freely between star systems. Scientists collaborated on projects that pushed the boundaries of technology, medicine, and exploration. Artists shared their cultures, creating a rich tapestry of traditions and stories. For the first time in generations, the galaxy felt alive with possibility. Yet even amid this progress, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The Arendor texts still held unanswered questions. Who were they? Why had they vanished? And why had their fleet responded to humanity? These mysteries weighed heavily on his mind, and he spent countless hours studying the ancient language, searching for clues. One day, while reviewing data from the flagship's archives, he stumbled upon something extraordinary. A recording, left behind by the Arendor themselves. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a figure cloaked in shimmering robes. Its voice was soft but commanding, speaking directly to those who would find the fleet. To those who awaken our legacy, it began, know that you are heirs to a great responsibility. We built these ships not as tools of conquest but as instruments of balance. Our civilization fell because we allowed ambition to blind us to the needs of others. Do not repeat our mistakes. Use this power wisely and remember that true strength lies not in domination, but in unity. The message ended abruptly, leaving Daniel stunned. He called Rachel immediately, sharing the recording with her. Together they realized what it meant. Humanity wasn't chosen by chance. The Arendor had recognized something in them, a capacity for compassion, creativity, and cooperation. It was a gift, but also a challenge. Inspired by the message, Daniel and Rachel decided to establish an academy. Located on a lush, Earth-like planet, the facility would train future generations in diplomacy, engineering, and exploration. Its purpose was simple: to ensure that the lessons of the past were never forgotten. Students from across the galaxy came to learn, bringing with them diverse perspectives and talents. The academy became a beacon of hope, a place where dreams of a brighter future took root. Years passed and the galaxy continued to heal. The scars of war faded, replaced by signs of growth and renewal. Humanity thrived, not because it sought dominance but because it embraced collaboration. Daniel and Rachel chose not to rule but to guide, stepping back when younger leaders emerged to take their place. On quiet evenings, they often returned to the flagship, now docked in orbit around the Academy. Standing on its bridge, they gazed out at the stars, reflecting on how far they had come. The journey had been long and difficult, filled with moments of doubt and despair. But through perseverance and courage, they had forged a path toward peace. Rachel broke the silence one night, her voice warm with gratitude. "We didn't do this alone," she said. "It was everyone, the rebels, the allies, the people who believed in us when we barely believed in ourselves." Daniel smiled, nodding in agreement. "And it's not over yet," he added. "There's still so much to discover, so much to build." As the galaxy looked to the future, the ancient fleet remained a symbol of what was possible. Its ships guarded the stars, protecting the fragile bonds of trust that held the coalition together. And though the Arendor were gone, their legacy endured in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a better world.